So, Secretary Collins, I really appreciate you taking the time. You have had quite the career trajectory, starting out military chaplain, or I don't even know if that was the first, but military chaplain, lawyer, congressman, now Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Could you have ever predicted the path that you would end up on?
No, especially when you throw in pastor and business person. You know, as a joke a long time ago, my mom and dad would just sort of laugh, say, one day you'll have a real job. And we were looking at, but no, I think that's the way life is, though. I think too many times we get, I mean, for those people in life that God's calling gives them clarity from, I know folks and friends of mine who said, I'm going to be a doctor when they were 6 years old and they've now retired and being a doctor. My path was a little different. My path was more of a seasonal, which I think is very much of a life approach. Things come in seasons, and I think everything builds upon that preparation. If you'd have told me, you know, back when I was pastoring a little church in Gainesville, Georgia, would I be, you know, overseeing a VA with 400,000 people? Probably not. But lessons that I learned there prepared me for what I do here, and all along the life. So I just encourage everybody, bloom where you're planted. It's amazing what you'll learn. I
love that. So what exactly was behind the decision to join the military as a chaplain?
Oh, it's something I wanted to do, that service aspect. It was something going all the way back to college for me. I went to North Georgia College, which is now the University of North Georgia, but it's one of the senior military colleges in the country. I did not participate because I had to work my way through college. So, but I commuted because I was close enough there. But it's always been something my family, my dad was in the National Guard. I was, you know, it was just something I was drawn to. I thought I was going to possibly go earlier in the career, but I think, again, as we said earlier, the seasons of life were not ready yet. And be able to go in and minister in an environment like that is just a unique challenge, and I think it was something that I was, you know, that calling to have.
And I was surprised to learn that you are actually still a military chaplain. Yes. Can you talk about why it was important for you to continue that, even as you have bloomed in other areas?
Well, it's very, sometimes very practical. I'd gotten about halfway through when I got elected to Congress, and I've been about 10, almost 11 years into my career, and my wife was very blunt. She said, you spent this long and deployed this much, you're going to stay till you retire. So when Miss Lisa talks, we listen. And so some of it was just pride, some of it was just wanting to. So it's a sense of camaraderie. It's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of something bigger than yourself. For me, I'm in my twilight of my career now. I've got just probably another year at best finishing up, but it's something I identify with. I was telling somebody this the other day that I was thinking, it came out of my mouth that this might be my last year, my last PT test, my last, and it was like, ooh, it hit me different when I said that.
You mentioned this a little bit, but how have all of those different life experiences of your past, along with your faith, shape the leadership style that you have and your vision for the VA?
I think you take several of those apart. The faith aspect is like my glasses that I wear. It's just how I see everything. And it's not, people talk about being able to take on and off faith. Well, I don't think you can. If true faith is, if from my perspective, is a Christian faith. But when you have that faith, it's the thing that motivates you, as you guide you, your moral compass, if you would, is that centering. Then that will apply into things that you learn. As a young kid, I call it a kid, I was 28 years old at the time, went to pastoring a small church with senior adults everywhere, and my daughter at the time was 2. And you begin to learn. You find out in life that you don't know everything, that there's people that can teach you. I spent 11 years there. We grew a great deal. You learn those lessons. I went back to law school. I originally thought I was going to go to law school early in college. It didn't happen. I went back when I was in my late 30s. I think I was able to take the years of experience in fatherhood and parenting and being a husband, took that into law school when I was surrounded with 15, 16 years younger, gave me a different life perspective. And then going into public service, whether it be as a lawyer or as in the General Assembly in Georgia or in the Congress, it's just building upon it. I think that's the one thing that we forget sometimes, that our life is sort of built upon the blocks that we come on. We tend to think at times that they're separate and distinct, but really out there they're really interconnected. So for me, it was just, I learned how to deal with people, how to handle problems, how to think differently, be compassionate, listen, but also fight, and not back down on issues that matter, and do so in a way, though, that at the end of the day we can still find ways to find some agreement.
When it comes to the work that you're doing here, one of the areas that I know you're focused on. Many veterans face not just physical wounds, but invisible wounds. How are you looking to address veteran suicides?
That's one of the harder aspects that we have, is to look at it, because sometimes it is such a, there are signs, but then there are a lot of times those signs are almost indistinguishable till after the fact. I mean, I've been involved in this from years now, both as counseling those who called and sitting in my office. And what I tend to find is what we've got to do is reach out to them, that there's a comfort level, that it's okay to talk about, that it's when you feel like hope is gone, that there's ways that you can find easy inlets, whether it be for us, our veteran crisis lines, or from our 988 number, where they can just call, hit 1, and talk to somebody 24/7, 365. But I'm also thinking the VA needs to be a bigger role than just simply an organization that talks about this. We've got to also encourage veterans to remember where they came from. In their services, you even leave anybody behind. Well, what happened to that after we got out? Do we still keep in contact with our friends? Do we still keep in contact with our veteran buddies, our wingmans, our battle buddies? Those things need to continue, because a veteran talking to another veteran, somebody who served, is much better than somebody that they don't know. So it's a whole cultural awareness that these are real issues. PTS is real issues. TBI, traumatic brain injury, moral injury. These things are real, and that we need to find ways for a comfort in able to talk about that, because in many ways, I don't believe that a drug is going to always cure that. It's got to be a holistic concept to do so. So it's a hard thing for us to look at, because the numbers haven't changed in many, many years. But I think it's also because we sort of tend to do the same things over and over, and we don't put good return on investment of that. And to me, there could be no greater return on investment than to save someone's life.
Another action that your office has taken that I'm sure hits close to home for you, you recently took action to prevent a Pennsylvania VA hospital, and also any nationwide going forward, from censoring its chaplains. Can you talk about why you felt you needed to step in there?
Well, that's another example of being a 23-year chaplain who's been in all aspects of that in leadership. And it was just a basic point. I think the one thing that we met, sometimes, there is maliciousness out there, but sometimes there's just forgetting who we are. And in a rush in a society, in a world that wants to make everything rounded edges that are smooth, the gospel is not rounded edges. And the faith is not, sometimes it is always smooth and palatable to everyone. In fact, Scripture actually teaches us differently there. But for a chaplain, you're to practice in the faith you come from. Now, as a chaplain, that doesn't mean we're all Christian chaplains. There are other faiths that are involved as well. And I expect them to participate when it comes to their faith aspect from their tradition, okay? And so for me, it was very simple. You're not gonna, if they're preaching, they're doing their services in their faith tradition, they're gonna do so regardless of who endorsed them to be there. Very easy, just a reminder of who we are, and that we're not going to censor things when it comes to the matters of faith.
What are some other actions that you have taken so far? You're still, just getting started, but that you've taken so far as secretary that you're proud of?
I think I'm proud of the focus from being about the organization to putting in is the focus on the veteran again. And that seems like a subtle change, and I've had someone say, well, that's what we've always been about. Well, if it was, would we be doing the same things that we're doing? And so I think putting it back, and now I'm hearing much more of our folks talk about that we're a service organization, which is what we are. We're not a jobs agency. We're not a employment group. We're not a function of something in the government. We're about service, and that's service our veterans. We only have one committed clientele, and that's a veteran, and they've earned that benefit. So I think the refocus on the veteran, refocus on why we're here, that we are an excellence organization. We're not going to take the abuse and jabs from the Hill or the press or others. We're going to fix things, and we're going to be honest about how we do it. I think bringing people together into unity, I think one of the things that I look at is our flag policy, that we're putting the American flag and the POW flag back out. We're not trying to separate us under nationalities or belief systems that can alienate. We're going to come back under that. That was the one thing I still serve with a flag on my shoulder, is American flag. So simple things like that, but also really a commitment to this workforce that we're no longer just going to simply put money and people at problems. We're going to actually see if we're getting a return, if we're actually getting the entire result. So it's more of a change. It's a slow change, but in a large organization, you got to start at the top, and that's what my job is.
Do you believe that God has placed a specific call on your life that has kind of seen you through each of these different careers? And how are you seeing that play out in this role?
Yes. I mean, that's without a doubt. I believe God's calling on all of our lives, whether we acknowledge it or not, especially if you've accepted the faith in Christ for what He did for us. We're no longer ours. I think we tend to, I think sometimes in faith, we look at it as something I've added on, and as if a jacket or as a sticker saying, I'm a Christian now. Well, from my faith perspective, and for others it may be different. But for me, it was saying, okay, this is, God's in control. We sort of sing the hymn, have thine own way, Lord, but do we really mean it? Except unless I want it to be. So I think the calling is important, and that calling's differently. It's not, for some it could be a very audible calling. It could be you driving down the road and you feel that voice, or you hear that voice. For some it's the opportunities opened up. So for me it is saying, okay, this is what as I start most every day, out of the gym and into my quiet times, it's just, okay, God, what do you want today? It is, let the thoughts and the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be pleasing to you. And so a calling is something that keeps us, for the last thing I'll say about it would be, in good days, it's easy. Hard days, it can still be easy, because that calling is a reminder that you're not here for a moment, you're here for a purpose.
With the focus of this administration on cutting waste, you have been passionate about the fact that you don't need to sacrifice veteran care for fiscal responsibility. How are you going about doing that?
Looking at our organization as a whole, I mean, we've grown by, thousands of employees, billions of dollars in money, but really was the results, after a GAO study said for the last 10 years, we're falling short. We're on a high risk list for the things that we should be doing. So the question is, if you looked at it 10 years ago and you said you'd have this much money and this much people, wouldn't you have solved those problems? Well, the answer is no, we didn't. So what we're saying is are we spending the money in the right places? And also moving people in the right places. We have a lot of consolidation that have just grown over time. And not thinking, okay, if you add 5 here, nobody talks about it, but then after you do it numbers of times, you're into hundreds of people. So we've had consolidation of issues like payroll issues that should have been consolidated a long time ago, human resources, contracting. There's a lot of things that are behind the scenes that never affect a patient directly, and also don't affect the ones giving that care directly, but can be done in a more efficient manner. So it's really just saying, what do you have, and do we have it better? And if we've gotten too big, well, can we use those funds and resources for other aspects such as care and the equipment that we need as we go forward?
Last question for me. When you leave this role, how do you hope to leave the VA?
Better than where I found it. To make a difference. Simple as that.